Canada is very tough. Canada is very, we're not treated well by Canada, and we have to be treated well.
Today we're diving into something that's been buzzing around lately, the trade war between the US and Canada. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why does this matter to me? Well, this isn't just about politics or tariffs. It's about real-world consequences that could affect the price of gas, jobs, and even your daily routine. So, grab a seat because we're going to break down what's really going on, what might happen next, and what it could mean for both sides of the border. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of our deep dives into important global issues. If you enjoy this video, hit that like button, and let's get into it. Let's start with the first fact, the root of the trade tensions. Alright, let's rewind for a second. A few years ago, Trump made it clear he was going to put America first. And let's be honest, no one really knew what that was going to look like. One of the first big moves he made was imposing tariffs on steel and aluminum. You might remember that Canada got caught up in this, even though we've always been close allies. But Trump argued that these tariffs were about protecting US national security.
Canada is very tough. They're very, very tough to do business with.
And well, Canada didn't exactly roll over. They responded with their own tariffs, hitting American goods. So here we are, caught in a trade standoff. So what's the big deal with these tariffs? Why are they such a problem for both sides? Well, it goes way deeper than just taxes on steel. It's about the bigger picture, the economic ties that bind these two nations. The oil card, what could happen next? Here's where it gets really interesting. Canada has something the US really needs, oil. And I don't mean just a little bit. I'm talking about millions of barrels a day that flow south, powering US refineries. If Canada suddenly turned off the tap, it would throw a massive wrench in the US energy sector. Gas prices would shoot up, industries would struggle, and suddenly that smooth-running economy wouldn't seem so smooth. But here's the kicker. Cutting off oil isn't just a US problem. It's a Canada problem too. If Canada cuts off oil, it risks damaging its own economy. Why? Because, let's face it, finding alternative markets for that oil isn't exactly a walk in the park. The US is Canada's biggest customer, and without them things could get really messy. So you might be thinking, well, if Canada can't cut off oil, what's the point of even talking about it? That's where the power dynamics come in. Let's talk about the trade-offs. Both sides know the consequences. But who's got the bigger leverage here? Now, while all this talk about oil sounds like it's giving Canada a lot of power, there's a twist.
Canada is a major oil and gas producing country.
The US has been making strides toward energy independence. With fracking and new drilling techniques, they're producing more oil than ever. Some people argue that with all this new domestic production, the US might not need Canada's oil anymore. But let's not kid ourselves. Canada's oil still plays a crucial role. It's not just about how much oil there is, but about the quality and compatibility with US refineries. Cutting off that oil could cause a whole new set of problems for US industries. That said, even though the US might not need Canada's oil as much as before, they're still in a tricky situation. Canada can't exactly go and sell that oil anywhere else. So what's next for Canada? Can they really afford to play the oil card? On the Canadian side, it's not just about trade deals, it's about the people. Canadians are feeling the heat. The cost of living is on the rise, people are feeling the pinch, and there's a lot of frustration about what some see as unfair treatment by their southern neighbor. So, some Canadians are pushing for the government to take a stronger stand, even if it means taking drastic measures. And that's where this whole shutting off the oil idea comes in. It's a way to say, hey, we're not just going to roll over and accept this, but there's a flip side. If they do this, they could hurt themselves just as much as they hurt the US. So, with all this internal pressure building, the Canadian government is caught between a rock and a hard place. But what if these tariffs are really just the beginning of a larger drama? Let's step back and look at the bigger picture here. For Trump, this isn't just about tariffs. It's about negotiating better terms. The US wants fair trade. They want better deals on goods, agriculture, and yes, oil. Some people argue that these tariffs are just part of a strategy to get Canada to open up more markets and lower its trade barriers. The question is, can both sides come to the table and find a solution that benefits everyone? Or are they just too far apart to make it work? So, what happens if they don't find a way to come to the table? What if things escalate? Let's talk about the global impact. Global consequences, the bigger impact. If this trade war continues, it's not just the US and Canada that'll feel the pain. Global oil markets could go haywire. Prices could spike, economies could slow down, and industries worldwide might be caught in the crossfire. It's a delicate balance, and both countries know this. A disruption in oil supply could set off a chain reaction of economic problems that no one wants to deal with. So what does all this mean for the future of Canada-US relations? Let's take a look at what could happen next. The escalation, here's where it gets even more interesting. As if things weren't complicated enough, Trump has already made it clear that he's not stopping with just Canada. Recently, he said that the US will impose tariffs on the European Union as well.
Well, we have massive deficits with the European Union, massive, like $350 billion, if you can believe it.
The question is, where does this end? It's not just Canada and the US now. This trade strategy could spread to other allies too. And let's be honest, it's not like either country is backing down anytime soon.
But this is the way President Trump negotiates. And you can rest assured that if we do not get cooperation from countries, then, of course, the tariffs will be implemented. We have no other choice. President Trump wants to save American lives.
Canada's response will be crucial. If they decide to move forward with cutting off oil, that could escalate things to a level that neither side wants. But on the flip side, if the US feels backed into a corner, they might retaliate in ways that could surprise everyone. And don't forget, both sides are deeply interconnected through trade deals like USMCA, which means that any real fallout from this trade conflict could ripple through the entire continent. Things aren't looking like they'll calm down anytime soon. The stakes are getting higher, and both nations will have to make some tough decisions in the coming months. This is what Trump said lately.
We don't need them to make our cars. We don't need them to give us lumber. We don't need them for agricultural products because we have all the agriculture we need.
Will they keep negotiating, or will they let emotions get the best of them? With all of this uncertainty, how do we protect ourselves? How should both governments respond? Let's take a closer look at what could happen if this trade war continues to escalate. First off, one option is for Canada to stand its ground. If they decide to proceed with limiting oil exports to the US, it could serve as a major bargaining chip. The US would certainly feel the pressure, with industries relying heavily on Canadian oil to fuel its refineries. Gas prices would spike, supply chains could falter, and US consumers might experience some immediate discomfort. However, the long-term effects on Canada could be equally severe. If they cut off their biggest customer, they would face major economic losses. Oil is a crucial part of the Canadian economy, and finding new markets for it, especially at the scale needed, wouldn't be easy. There are already challenges around infrastructure, from pipelines to shipping capacity, making any quick pivot to other international markets unlikely. Plus, cutting oil exports could cause major disruptions in the Canadian job market, particularly in oil-dependent regions like Alberta. On the other hand, the US has its own options. The US might attempt to push Canada even harder by imposing stricter tariffs on additional goods. While Canada might retaliate, the US economy is considerably larger, which could give Trump's administration more leverage in these talks. The US could also accelerate its energy independence strategies, making themselves less reliant on foreign oil altogether. But doing so could take time and wouldn't address the immediate need for oil imports, meaning short-term consequences might still be harsh for American consumers and industries. Another potential scenario is a diplomatic approach. Both sides could sit down to negotiate and de-escalate tensions. If a solution is found that benefits both countries, we could see tariffs removed and a return to normal trade practices. But that would require both governments to put aside their political pride and focus on the economic health of their nations. If negotiations do not yield results, however, the situation could spiral into a full-blown trade war, leading to further tariffs, trade barriers, and potentially economic sanctions. The effects of that would go far beyond oil and steel, impacting agriculture, technology, and other critical sectors, and likely sending ripples through global markets. Now that we've unpacked the situation, here's where you come in. What do you think? Should Canada hold firm and risk the economic fallout, or should they negotiate a way forward? Will the US continue pushing its tariffs, or is this a bluff on both sides? I want to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below. Let's get a conversation going. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We've got a lot more content coming your way, and you won't want to miss out on our next deep dive into the global economy. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when our next video drops. And as always, if you found this video insightful, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.